The man of the hour, the reason we are here, and it's again just a tremendous honor to have Dr. McCollough here. As I said earlier, the energy that was in the room the other night when we had roughly 400 people in Tuscaloosa on campus. Dr. McCollough spoke was just absolutely amazing. I will warn you, his list of credentials and accomplishments are very long. But they are obviously worth telling you, and I want to mention those. Since entering practice, Dr. Galen McCollough has obtained international recognition as a surgeon and teacher. Dr. McCollough was an academic All-American offensive center on Alabama coach Paul Bear Bryant's 1964 national championship team, drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in the National Football League. He was named first-team All-Pro center for the National Professionalism Football League of America while attending medical school at UAB. In 2017, he was inducted into the state of Alabama's Sports Hall of Fame and its Distinguished Alabama Sportsman. The same year, he was honored at Bryant-Denny Stadium, as I mentioned earlier, with the University of Alabama's very prestigious National Alumni Association's Paul W. Bryant Alumni Athlete Award. The award is bestowed annually on a former student athlete whose life has been defined by character, contributions to society, professional achievement, and service to fellow man. And I don't think that no better words could accurately describe Dr. Galen McCollough, and that's the reason that he received that award. Dr. and Mrs. McCollough are benefactors of a one-of-a-kind McCollough Institute of Pre-Medical Scholars at the University of Alabama, the Susan McCollough Art School, and the Susan and Galen McCollough A-Club Career and Leadership Planning Center for the University of Alabama Student Athletes, and the Bill Battle Academic Center. Dr. McCollough is the former Vice President of the University of Alabama's President Cabinet and Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Birmingham, Alabama. He was honored by the March of Dimes as Alabama Citizens of the Year in 1994 and 1995 and is listed as the National Registry of Who's Who in Medicine. Dr. McCollough has been included in Best Doctors of America since 1994 and listed among America's top plastic surgeons. On September 2008, he received the John Dickinson Teacher Award for the American Academy of Facial, Plastic, and Reconstructive Surgery. He serves as a trustee for Judson College of Women, member of Pensacola State College adjunct faculty, past chairman of the Baldwin County Republican Party, and past vice chairman of the Alabama Republican Party Congressional Districts 1 and 2. Dr. McCollough has traveled the world teaching seminars and techniques of head and neck plastic surgery to surgeons anxious to learn his techniques. After 25 successful years in Birmingham, he relocated the internationally acclaimed McCollough Plastic Surgery Clinic to Gulf Shores, Alabama, where he founded the 35,000 square foot McCollough Institute for Appearance and Health, an interdisciplinary professional complex dedicated to helping people from all walks of life look, feel, and perform better longer. The McCollough Institute was honored by the Alabama Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce as Business Year 2002. Dr. McCollough and his lovely wife Susan are horse enthusiasts. They live on a horse ranch and are raised Tennessee walking horses. The couple has 2 children and 4 grandchildren, and I could not be more honored to present to you tonight Dr. Galen McCollough.
Well, thank you very much. I have really looked forward to this. I had an opportunity to come a year or so ago, and my schedule just did not allow me to do it. But I'm really happy to be here tonight with some of my new friends and some of my old friends. I have members of my family here tonight that I'd like to recognize. First of all, my wife, Susan, of 54 years. And our son, Stead, an architect in Gulf Shores, in Orange Beach, Alabama. Susan's brother, Joel Nomberg, who's a retired attorney that moved over to Gulf Shores about probably 7 or 8 years ago. Well, I want to thank Wilmore, number one, for the nice things that he said, but also for inviting me to come and share some stories with you tonight. That's really what I want to do. And I also want to recognize my dear friend, Dr. Ed Meadows, who's president of Pensacola State College, who's done a fabulous job here, taking this from a junior college up to now a four-year school. And this is a great man, and I'm really honored to call Ed Meadows my friend. He's also a horse enthusiast, he and his wife Kitty. We don't get to ride that much anymore, but we've been on a number of horse rides together. And, you know, it's good to play cowboy every once in a while, isn't it, Ed? I want to acknowledge also some of my heroes. Bobby Humphrey, who I've known since he played. I was very fortunate to be a member of the medical staff at the University of Alabama for the football team when I lived in Birmingham. And that was when Bobby played the full 4 years that he played. So I got to know him very, very well off of the field as well as on the field. And I can tell you this is a class man. I know his mother, I know his brother, and I know his wife, and they really are classy people. And Bobby, it's a pleasure to call you my friend as well, too. And Javier, every time I see you move, I expect you to be crossing the end zone with your arms up, because my wife will tell you, and Joel, who watches a lot of ball games with us, that every time we catch a punt now, I say, boy, I wish we had Javier back there. Am I right? I said, Arenas, that's the guy. I mean, he thought he was supposed to score every time he caught the ball. And we thought you were going to score too, Javier. So we're really glad to have you back on campus as a coach. And I was asking him before we came in here, I said, how do you teach how to catch punts? And, you know, I thought I was just going to make a cute little thing, and he'd say, I don't know. But 15 minutes later, he's still telling me how you coach catching punts. And, you know, then I finally said, well, don't you have to have some kind of sixth sense that when you catch the ball, you know which way to go and where the pressure's coming from? He said, no, so he said, you just call that stupidity. Something like that, anyway. Yeah. And Trent, so glad that you came in. I haven't had an opportunity to meet you, but what a lot of thrills you gave us. And you're another one of those guys that all three of you, when you touched the ball, touchdown was somewhere very close by. And wish you well in all the rest of the things that you do. You know, I was especially proud to be here with these backs. You know, we linemen don't get a chance to hang around with the backs too much. We kind of have to keep off to ourselves, and we don't get a chance to score many touchdowns. But I want to tell you what, next time we need to have a picture of me scoring a touchdown against Tennessee. I actually did. Blocked a punt, and I caught it in the air and ran 26 yards into that checkered end zone, and I just kept going right on through there. What was really funny is we had another player. His name was Tank Mitchell. Now, Tank was about this tall, but he was about this wide when he came there, so that's why they called him Tank Mitchell. But he was in on the play, and so the ball was in the air, and I caught it and started running, and Tank is running behind me, right behind me, hollering, lateral it. So you crazy, man. This is the only time I've ever had a chance to score a touchdown. But it's been a great run. I wouldn't take anything for my opportunity having played football at University of Alabama. And I was thinking, Bobby, when you got up here, you gave the shortest speech that I think that we'll hear tonight. But I'll try not to make mine the longest. But I want to share some stories with you that hopefully will be entertaining, but also all the stories that I have to share with you have a life lesson. And Jim Bob Horn came down to the Baldwin County alumni group, and I had an opportunity to stand up and tell a couple of stories. And then Jim Bob is actually the one that invited me to come and speak to the National Alumni Association in Tuscaloosa a couple of weeks ago. And it was a great evening. Susan will tell you that I was so pumped when I finished, it took me about 3 hours to wind down. I really got carried away with that one. But I really want to talk to you tonight, and the message that I want to share actually started back 54 years ago. And that was when I stepped foot on the campus of the University of Alabama for a different reason. I had been there before. I played in the state high school championship game, and we played it on this campus at Tuscaloosa. I'd been to Boys State. And so that was held at the University of Alabama at that time. But when I stepped there this time, in 1961. I came there with two things in mind. Number one is Coach Bryant had promised us, my teammates and I, when he recruited us, he said, if you do everything that I ask you to do, and then some, I promise you two things. When you leave from there, you'll have 2 rings on your finger. One will be a graduation ring, and you get an education. The other will be a national championship ring. I got my ring. When we got there, we were scared to death because, you know, Coach Bryant had come from Texas A&M, and many of you remember the Junction Boys, and we truly knew the story about the Junction Boys, and he sort of weeded you out pretty quickly. We had what we call gut checks. We'd have 2 or 3 gut checks every year, and we never knew when they were going to come. They were usually on the coldest, wettest, rainiest day in the winter, or they were on the hottest day in the summertime. And if you stayed there, we had 36 players that were recruited when I went there, and only 8 of us were there 4 years later. And so he put you to the test, and he used to say, I'm going to make my practices really, really hard, because if you quit, I want you to quit in practice, not in the 4th quarter in a ball game. And so we knew what he was doing. He was preparing us not only for football games, but he was preparing us for life as well. But in 2017, on a September afternoon, I had an opportunity to return to Bryant-Denny for a different reason. I'd stood on that same piece of dirt right on the 50-yard line at midfield on a number of occasions. I mentioned the high school all-star game. I was a team captain and went out there for the coin toss. And then when I was a freshman, I was a team captain with the defensive team, actually, and I went there for a coin toss. And I was back there many, many times during the 4 years that I played varsity, or 3 years I played varsity football. I was there on many occasions to snap the ball to the punter or to snap the ball to Joe Namath or Steve Sloan in order to get the play started. You see, the center has 2 jobs. The center is supposed to, they often call him the quarterback of the offensive line. You're supposed to go there and read the defense, and then you make the blocking assignment calls for all the linemen. And so when you watch the ball games this year, watch the center. He'll go up there, and the center will grab the ball, and then he'll start pointing to the defense. And the quarterback is pointing to the defense. Well, the quarterback's calling the pass defense, where the strong side linebacker, right, Javier. But the center is reading the line and the linebackers, and he's calling the blocking scheme for the team. And you might remember a few years back when A.J. McCarron was the quarterback, and who was the center? Barrett Jones was the center. A.J. went up there and wanted the ball snapped, and Barrett is still calling the offensive line, and they're fighting a little bit, and finally Barrett turns around and slaps him a little bit, say, hell, I'm going to do my job too. You do yours, I'll do mine. And then next thing you know, they're on the sidelines hugging each other, and that's the way it is. We linemen like to hug those running backs and quarterbacks every chance that we get. But this time I was back at midfield for something else, and I was there to receive an award. I'd known about the award for a long, long time. But this day I was there with 2 others, Leon Marlaire and Marty Lyons, to receive that. I never would have been there had it not been for 2 people sitting in this room, and that's Jim and Ann Given. And I want to thank them every chance I get for nominating me for that award and for staying after it and being persistent, because it truly means a lot to me. And it next to my national championship ring, I don't know that there's anything any more precious to me as far as trophies are concerned. That afternoon, I was standing there and I looked up at that stadium. And when I played there, we had about 25 or 30,000 people in the stands. And now there are 100,000 plus there. And it's a different feeling when you're standing at midfield and you're looking up there and you see 100,000 people that are there for a football game. And I thought about, as I was standing there with that award in my left hand, about all the people who were responsible for my being there. My parents, my coaches, my teachers, all of the individuals that had something to do with my being there that day. And I thought to myself, I need to do something to pay tribute to all of these people. So on the way home that night, Susan and I were talking, and I said, I'm going to write, my next book is going to be about what this award meant to me. And my way to thank all the people who played a part in my being able to receive that. So we started thinking about titles, and I came up with a title called Victory in the Game of Life. Because you see, we play sports, and those are great. Those are great games. But there's even a greater game out there, and that's the game of life that we all play. And I think the great coaches, the great administrators, the great athletic directors know that. And they not only prepare us for football games, but they prepare us for the game of life. Because, your football career is not forever. And it's one play away from it being over. And so you better, what they teach us is you better prepare. You better get an education that will allow you to earn a living. Speaking of that, I digress for just a moment, and I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I actually was a quarterback. I had worked really, really hard to make to win the starting quarterback job in my high school, Enterprise High School. And the coach worked hard with me. So I'd won the job, and I'd heard that the coach had been hired by another town not too far from us, Geneva, Alabama, to become a principal. And so Enterprise hired a new coach. And I heard that he didn't have a quarterback in his situation, in his offense. He ran an offense that's very similar to the Wildcat, where he had a scat back or a wide receiver or a tailback is what they call him, and the ball was snapped directly to, and sometimes he'd have somebody, a fullback, he hand it off to. But I heard that he didn't have a quarterback in his system, and I said, wait till he sees the spring game. And when he sees the way I played in the spring game, he's going to change his offense. Well, let me tell you, we had our first team meeting. He's walking up and down in front of the team, clicking his heels, and he's looking around. Finally said, where's the big, tall kid that used to play quarterback? I said, used to play quarterback. So I said, Coach, that'd be me. He said, son, I need to see you in the dressing room after this is over. So we went in and he said, I don't have a quarterback in my system. I got to move you. I can move you to end or center. And I did the numbers. We had one letterman returning at center, and we had three lettermen returning at end. So I went from being a starting quarterback to a second string center and a linebacker who had never played defense a day in his life. My career was ended as a quarterback, and I thought it was over. But I worked and I kept pressing forward. And then late in the second half of my senior year, I started getting some attention. And I was offered scholarships to come play defense for University of Alabama, for Auburn, for Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Clemson. And so I had a very difficult decision to make. And I chose to go to Alabama. So I went to Alabama. I'm fast forward this a little bit. I went to Alabama, as I mentioned earlier on, I was the defensive captain. I was a starting linebacker on the freshman team. And I had made, after the spring game, I had made the starting position. Leroy Jordan was on one side, and I played the opposite side. So Leroy and I were the two linebackers. In a preseason drill, we had a big running back. His name was Butch Wilson. And he came through the line, and I bratted him just right on the numbers. The only thing is, when I did, my arms went numb. And then they said, do it again, do it again. You know how that goes, right? So stupid me, I did it again. This time I couldn't move my arms at all. Long story short, I broke my neck. I was done. My career ended again. So I couldn't play defense. And I had been an offensive center in high school. And I could snap the ball to the punter, and I could snap the ball to the tailback. And so I started hanging around the centers and the kickers. I started hanging around the kickers. And Coach Bryant walked around, he had a stopwatch, and he would time everything. And I was able to get the ball to the punter faster than any of the other centers. And then we had a guy named Buddy French who could get the ball off. He had it figured out that if he had a track star, the 100-meter dash track star, run from the line of scrimmage to where the ball was going to be kicked 20 times, and he could never get there in less than 2 seconds. So in his mind, if you get the ball off, get the ball to the punter gets it off in less than 2 seconds, you'll never get a punt block. And we never did. But I made the traveling squad as the long snapper. And then I started hanging around the other centers and learning a little bit about blocking. And, you know, my philosophy was real simple. I never hit anybody I could trip or hold. I could get my elbows around them and I could leg whip them. All the things that I did are illegal today. They really are. They're illegal. We couldn't touch anybody with our hands, but we could leg whip them and trip them and do all those other kind of things. So I ended up, you know, getting some recognition and made an All-American team and was drafted by the Cowboys and had a very difficult decision, either to go straight to med school or go play football for the Cowboys. And I'll tell you what made my decision. I got advice from everybody. So finally I went to see Coach Bryant. I said, Coach, what do you think? He got really quiet for about 15 seconds, and he asked me a question nobody else had asked me. He said, Galen, can you live without football? I never thought about it. I played football years. Can I live without football? And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, Coach, I think I can. He said, okay. He said, you got a national championship ring on your finger. He said, you made an All-American team, and I'm telling you, you could play in the NFL. So you got nothing to prove. Go get your medical degree. That's what I did. And so, you know, if you ask for advice, take the advice. Don't ask. A lot of people come and they want you to agree with what they've already decided that they intend to do. But if you ask for advice, listen to it. And then I did something really stupid. My second year in med school, I'd been out of football for 2 years. Only time in history that the NFL had a farm system. But this year they had a farm system. And the Atlanta Falcons had a farm system, a farm team in Huntsville, Alabama. And I get a call from this gentleman one night. And as I said, I'd been in med school for 2 years. I got a call from Mr. Jim Lane. And he said, Galen, I have just bought the farm team for the Atlanta Falcons, and I've got every position covered but offensive center. And he said, I got a couple of your old teammates on the team, and they said I should call you. I said, Mr. Lane, I'm honored that you would call me, but I turned down an opportunity to play in the big leagues, and I really don't think I'm interested. He said, well, if you'll come down to the Parliament House tomorrow night, I'll buy you a steak. And I got real quiet, and I said, Mr. Lane, I hadn't had a steak since I left the training table at Alabama. Had a lot of hamburger meat, had a lot of, other kinds of meat, but I hadn't had a steak. So I went down there, and anyway, he offered me the maximum amount of money that they could pay a player. I made more money per game than I was making per month working as an orderly and a scrub tech in the hospital. So I played that year, and I made the All-Pro team. And it got it out of my system. And I was real lucky that I didn't do something stupid and get hurt. But let me talk just a little bit about the book. The book that I wrote, called Victory in the Game of Life, tells those stories that I've just told you, plus a lot of others. And I talked to the Bryant Museum, and I talked to Calvin Brown and to Bob Pierce, and we agreed that all the proceeds of the book would go toward the Bryant Museum and to the National Alumni Association. So we call the book Victory in the Game of Life. One of the stories that I tell in there is Coach Bryant's pregame admonitions or advice to the team. Everybody wanted to know, what did he say? What did Coach Bryant say? What did he tell y'all? Get you all fired up to go play. Well, he didn't do that. He did just the opposite. He didn't want you all fired up. It was a day at the office. It was a job. You were going to go out there and do your job. Here's what he said. He said, you've worked all your life to get here today. Now you got an opportunity to go out there and put on your show. He said, you're ready. I watched you practice this week. Y'all are ready to play. Just go out there and do what you've been taught to do. He said, now I'm going to give you a couple of other things to think about. He said, I hope the other bunch comes out there and they're all fired up and they're jumping up and down, slapping each other upside the head with their helmet and maybe tears in their eyes. And he said, because on that opening kickoff, here's what I want you to do. And his voice would get real low. He said, you pick you out one of those guys with that other colored jersey, and you watch him come down the field, and you get right in front of him, and you brat him right between those numbers and knock him on his back. And then you reach down, and you help him up and say, I'll be right back. There's more of this to come. I mean, right now my adrenaline's flowing. I got chill bumps, and that's what he did. He knew how to, in a very calm way, he knew how to get you prepared. Now, here's what he also said. I want you to have a plan. We've got a game plan, and we're going to go out there and we're going to play the game. But what if 3 minutes into the game, you look up at the scoreboard, you're 3 touchdowns behind? What you going to do? Have you got a plan for that? How you going to play the rest of the game? He said, now, what if you look up there and you're 3 touchdowns ahead? What are you going to do? You're going to let off steam? Probably get beat? Have a plan. And that's what he did. He always had a plan, then he had a plan, and then he had a plan. One night, I went to visit him when they were playing, Alabama was playing in Birmingham, playing Baylor in Birmingham. And when I walked up to the door, I knocked on the door, and I was there to give him something that I promised to give him. And he came to the door, and I said, Coach, I just want to give you this. I'll tell you what it was, a $20 gold piece. When he spoke to clubs, he didn't want money. He didn't want a check and didn't want the cash. He wanted a $20 gold piece. Because you could put that gold piece in your pocket and didn't have to send it to let the IRS know you had it. Coach Bryant liked making money just about as much as he liked winning football games, I can tell you that. And so when he came and spoke to the Birmingham Touchdown Club, I was president of the Touchdown Club that year, we didn't have his $20 gold piece. The guy that was supposed to get it for him forgot it. And so I went there to give him the gold piece. I said, Coach, here's your gold piece, and I won't bother you. He said, no, come on in. He said, I need to take a break anyway. So I walked in, and he had taken the desk in the parlor part of his suite and pulled it in the center of the room. And I walked by, and there were 3 legal pads on that desk. And I looked at them, and I thought, 3 legal pads, and a little bit of scribbling on each one. So we sat down and started talking, and finally I said, I can't stand it, Coach. I got to ask you, why 3 legal pads? He said, hell, I ain't never told anybody this. He said, that first one's what I'm going to say if we get beat. That middle one's what I'm going to say if we get tied. You could tie games in those days. And then he said, the other one's what I'm going to say if we win. He always knew the right thing to say. He knew the right thing to say because he'd rehearsed it. He had prepared for every single thing. He used to say, expect the unexpected. Now, let me give you an example of one of those situations. I didn't know this at the time. We played, let me take you back a little bit. Alabama won the national championship in 1961. I was a freshman. Freshmen couldn't participate in those days. And we started the season in 62 with the drawing or painting over here with Namath throwing the ball. We started number 1 in the nation. And we kept the number 1 ranking all the way to the 8th game. And we went over to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. And we played awfully. We played terribly. And we were behind 7-0 until very late in the game. And we scored a touchdown with about 2 minutes to go in the game. Our group was called the Cardiac Kids, and I'll talk a little bit about that because we generally won most of our games in the waning minutes of the game. And so we scored a touchdown, and then everybody came to the sidelines, and the brain trust debated on what to do. We're going to kick extra point and tie it up and hope we get it back, and then maybe kick another field goal, or we're going to try to go for 2. And Coach Bryant said, I'm not going to tie this bunch over here. He said, we're going to go for 2. And so we went for 2, and we didn't make it. Controversial, yes, but we didn't get credit for it. And so we kicked off, and Leroy Jordan caused a fumble. We get the ball, drive it back down to the 16-yard line, ready for old Tim Davis, Mr. Automatic, to kick the winning field goal. 3rd down, timeout. Go to the sidelines again. Namath had been hurt in that game, so the backup quarterback was Jack Hurlbut. And they told him, he said, Bill Battle, you run a hook pattern in the corner of the end zone. He said, if he's open, hit him with it. If he's not open, throw the ball over his head, and we'll kick the field goal. Well, the quarterback tried to throw the ball over Bill's head, but he jumped about like these guys blocking that field goal. And he got one hand on the ball and knocked it into the Georgia Tech guy that was standing right there. Game over, national championship gone, promised ring, not there. I mean, we were devastated. So we went into the dressing room. he usually led us in the Lord's Prayer. We all got on our knees and said the Lord's Prayer. That day, he was a little bit late getting to the dressing room. And what he always told us, he said, in this game, any game, when the game's over, you run to the dressing room. You get into that dressing room as quick as you can. I don't want you hanging around out here on the field. He said, if we win, we're going to do all of our celebrating in there. If we lose, we're going to do all our crying and moaning and groaning in there. But when you leave that dressing room and you walk to the bus, the bystanders out there should never know where you won or lost the game. You maintain the same poise and confidence when you win as you do when you lose, or vice versa. Well, on this day, he said, take a knee. And his prayer was short. Not quite as short as Bobby's speech, but it was short. And here's what he said. I'll never forget these words as long as I live. Dear God, forgive me, for if I'd stayed at home today, these young men would have won the ball game. Well, I thought to myself, what did he just say? He didn't miss a block. He didn't fumble a ball. He didn't drop a pass. But he took full credit for the decisions that he made. And then he got up, and the first time I'd ever heard this said, been said by a lot of coaches since. He said, I'm really proud of you guys today. You didn't get beat out there. Time just ran out on you. He said, if we had more time on the clock, you'd have won the ball game. I know you would. He said, now, we're not going to feel sorry for ourselves. He said, if you do, we play Auburn and Birmingham next week. You feel sorry for yourself, you get beat again. But if you'll pick up where you left off this afternoon out there, we'll be okay. Well, we picked up. We picked up from where we left it. We had a good week of practice. Next week, we beat Auburn 34-3 in Birmingham. Then we were invited to the Orange Bowl. Strange things happen in the Orange Bowl. We went down to the Orange Bowl, and we played Oklahoma, who had taken over the number one spot. And in those days, the championships were awarded before the bowl games. If they were like they were today, we'd have gotten a championship then, because we beat Oklahoma 17-0. And so we picked up where we left off because he knew what to say. He had already prepared that, and I didn't know that until some 20 years later. But that's the kind of coach that he was. People often ask me to compare Coach Bryant and Coach Saban. One of the books that I offer here is called The Long Shot of Coach Paul Bear Bryant. I wrote this book Coach Saban's first year at Alabama. And you remember he was 7-6 that year? It wasn't a very good year for Alabama standards. But he was 7-6. And in the last chapter of that book, I wrote this. Coach Saban doesn't walk like Coach Bryant. He doesn't talk like Coach Bryant did. He doesn't look like Coach Bryant. But between the ears, they're identical twins. I said, Coach Saban will be the next legend at Alabama, because I could see him bringing back the same kinds of things that won for us. Coach Bryant used to say, same thing wins today, it's always won. Blocking and tackling, pitching and catching. And he said, it's just, it's how you play the game. So I think that, and Coach Saban now has demonstrated that he is the next legend. And what he's done with you young men and all of the players that he's had up there, he's prepared you not only to win championships, but you've been prepared for the game of life as well. And that's something that is as valuable as anything you can do, because, sports is only a short term. Bobby's been out of it for a while, but man, I've been out of it a long time. But things that I learned are still there. I'm going to jump now to a couple of stories, because I don't want to keep you here all night. We talk a lot about winning in the game of life. And we usually use a lot of examples of sports heroes when we talk about winning. But there's another kind of hero. And how many of you in the room are familiar with Helen Keller? Wonderful, wonderful. Helen Keller's story is all about winning in the game of life. For those of you who may not know, Helen was born a normal child. She was the daughter of a physician in Tuscumbia. At about the age of 3, she developed a viral infection. She lost her sight and she lost her hearing. And she was in a dark, silent world. She had no contact with the outside world except what she could feel. And they didn't really discipline her very much. They allowed her just pretty much to do what they wanted, she wanted to do, because they felt sorry for her. But her father hired a woman by the name of Ann Sullivan, who came down from the north. I think she was from New York. And she was a teacher, but she also had a visual defect. She would be considered legally blind in today's society, but she could see, but she understood a little bit about working with blind people. If you haven't seen the movie The Miracle Worker, write it down and go to Netflix or Amazon or whatever. Don't see the new one. Go back to the old one where Patty Duke was Helen Keller. It's a fabulous show. It's a fabulous story. But due to the efforts of this teacher, Helen Keller learned Braille, and she learned to do things. And she said that she did not consider, later on she became a prolific speaker and a writer. She wrote many, many books in Braille. And she would go all around the world speaking, although she'd never heard the sound of her own voice. Remember, there was a Miss Alabama not too long ago that was deaf and had a very, very nice speaking voice. And Helen lectured to everybody, telling them her story. And she did not consider blindness and deafness as a handicap. She called them inconveniences. Now think about that. That's pretty amazing. She didn't feel sorry for herself once she learned to have connection with the outside world. And one of the things that she often said was not written by her. It was written by E. Everett Hale. And it went something like this. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do some things. What I can do, I should do. And with the help of Almighty God, I will do what I can do. Now, those are powerful words. If you think about those words and you think about what we do on a daily basis, they're really great words to live life by. And I'm going to end this tonight with a story that I think Will may have been talking about when he was up here earlier. Well, I want to say one other thing. I'm sorry. I don't want to get ahead of myself. How many of you know what that means? Fourth quarter? Let me tell you what it means. It started when I was a sophomore at Alabama under Coach Bryant. We were behind in a ball game. And he came up and he got in, it was very calm at halftime. He said, we're behind, but we're going to be okay. You're in good shape. You're in better shape than they are. And we're going to win the game in the fourth quarter. He said, now, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I want you to do something. I want you to make a pledge, not just to yourself, but to some other people. He said, when that clock starts the first quarter or the end of the third quarter, I want you to turn around and look up at the stands at your mom and your daddy. You know where they're going to be sitting because you gave them your tickets on the 50-yard line, right? You turn to the stands and you raise 4 fingers and you say to yourself, I'm going to do everything in my power to see that my team wins the fourth quarter. And then you turn to your teammates and each one of you make that pledge to each other. I'm going to do everything in my power to see that I do my job so that we win the fourth quarter. And then very casually, you look across the field over there and you do that to that bunch on the other side. Not arrogantly, you just say, we're going to win the fourth quarter. Now, it's the fourth quarter. You see it in Pee Wee football all the way to the NFL. That ain't what it means, folks. Hell, you know it's the fourth quarter if you can look at the clock. It's the fourth quarter. You don't need the players on the sidelines to tell you. It's what they're doing is they don't realize it, but they're making the pledge, the 4-finger pledge. And if you look at the book, Victory in the Game of Life, I make an understated 4-finger pledge. I'm holding the trophy in my left hand, and I'm doing this to the sidelines. And what I was saying there is that I'm honored by you giving me this trophy and this award. Now I'm making a pledge to you. It's the fourth quarter of my life. And I'm going to do what I can do to justify the confidence you placed in me by giving me this award. That's what it means. So this year, when you see folks do that, you know something now that not very many people in the world know. It ain't the fourth quarter. It's a pledge. I'm going to end by telling a story. The last game that I ever played for the University of Alabama, we went down, we had won the national championship, and we went down again to the Orange Bowl, and we were playing Texas. Texas had a really good football team that year. Namath had been hurt, and Namath didn't play very much at all in the first half. And we were behind 10-0 at halftime. So we went in. Coach went over and asked Joe, "Can you go?" He said, "Yes, sir." So he threw out the game plan, as he frequently did. He'd take the whole game plan and throw it out at halftime, and we'd have 4 running plays and 3 or 4 pass patterns. That's what we played the second half with. And he said, "We're going to change everything up." He said, "We're going to pass the ball on first and second down. We're going to run it on third down." So we went back out there, and we scored a couple of touchdowns, and we came back, and with 2 minutes to go in the game, we're on the march. Cardiac kids. Here we go again. We get the ball, first and goal on the 2-yard line. No big deal. Hell, we've been there before. 3 plays later, we got 4th and goal on the 6-inch line. No big deal. We've been there before. We clashed into each other. Namath ran a quarterback sneak right behind me. When the play was over, I start looking for him and the ball. He's lying on top of me, and both of us are in the end zone from well above our waist up. One official comes in, takes the ball away from him, raises the ball up, calls it touchdown. We jump up and start celebrating. Here we are again. Headlinesman comes running in, and he said, did he score? I couldn't tell. He said, "Yeah, he scored." I took the ball away from him a yard in the end zone. And while they were talking, the guy in the white hat was a split crew. He was from the Southwest Conference. We had some coaches, some officials from the Southeast Conference. Grabbed the ball away from the fellow that had it, put it down on the 6-inch line, and whistled "First down, Texas," and overruled the touchdown. We didn't have instant replays in those days. You know, you don't have instant replays in life either. So we protested for a moment, but knew that it was to no avail. And that walk from the goal line in the Orange Bowl to the Alabama sidelines is the longest walk ever made in my life. It was the last time that I wore the red jersey. As we came off the field, I'll never know who it was. Somebody behind me said, "Coach, we scored." And with that, we all turned and looked at Coach Bryant. He hadn't moved. He didn't throw his hat down and, cause a ruckus and fuss and cuss and whatnot. He just stood there like a big oak tree. Well, when somebody said we scored, he stepped back and he looked at us, and here's what he said. "If Joe had walked in with a football, there'd be no question about it, would there?" Threw it right back at us. What I learned that night from those words is this: if you want to do something in life, you can't do just enough to get the job done. We had done what was expected. We had gotten the ball in the end zone. But you've got to go above and beyond what's expected, because the world's referees might not make the same call, or might not make the right call either. That lesson has driven me every day of my life since. Leave no room for doubt. Whatever the task, whatever you're asked to do, whatever you're charged with, go above and beyond what you're expected to do. That's how championships are won. That's how champions are made. And I do believe champions are made and not born. So those are the stories, those are the lessons that I wanted to share with you tonight. And Will, I thank you again for having me here. I hope that something that I've said may inspire you. And if you are inclined to do that, I'd be happy to sign the book. And keep in mind, as Will has already said, all the proceeds for the book go to the Alumni Association and to the Bryant Museum. Once again, it's been an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me here, and roll Tide.